Hi, welcome to the Upside. I'm your host, Paul Santinello, where we talk about all the good things that are going on in Long Meadow and the area. Today we're going to, we like to talk about politics here. We've had Tony Signoli and Rob Bizzuto. Today we're going to take a little bit of a different turn, and we're going to talk politics to a degree. But I want to talk about the Hampden County Sheriff Department. Sheriff Michael Ash has announced that he is going to be retiring, and I have the great pleasure to have with me Nick Cocchi, who's going to be running for Hampden County Sheriff. Nick, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Paul.
I'm excited to interview you because I went to the old York Street Jail, became a member of the Hampden County Deputy Sheriff's Association, sure. And it wasn't a scared straight kind of thing, but it's never want to go back down there again. And thank God they tore that place down. But we're going to talk to Nick today about a bunch of different things, not just the race, but other programs that go on in the Sheriff's Department. We had Anthony Gallooni on here after he had won he had won the primary, and we talked about what the impact is of the district attorney's office, not just in Long Meadow, but in all of Hampden County. And the same thing with the sheriff's department. It's not just a jail. It does impact our communities around here.
No, that's correct. As the county-wide goes, we service 23 cities and towns. The facility may be in Ludlow. We may have a facility in Springfield and Chicopee, but that's just where the facilities are sited. We take offenders from 23 cities and towns all around Hampden County. And I think that the Office of Sheriff, the importance, just like the DA, my good friend Anthony Gallooni, is that you have the ability to bring consistency throughout the 23 cities and towns. Each individual city and town has a police department and school committee, and they can do their things that fit their community best. But when it comes to the incarceration and the rehabilitation piece or the trial court part of it, it's good to have consistency throughout the entire county.
Okay, so this is where I want to hit on a few points to begin with. Like you said, the facilities might be in a different community. The center down on Howard Street, for example, is in Springfield, and the main facilities in Ludlow. What types of programs? You've been there for a while now. How long have you been in the Sheriff's Department?
Over 21 years. 21
years. Okay, so you're like 6 when you started and all that stuff.
Yes, yeah. 5.5 actually.
But so you've been there for 21 years, and the programs. If I got this right, the Hampden County Correctional Facility has one of the lowest rates of recidivism in the Commonwealth in the country, right? And I know, and it's actually a lot for me to know what that word means.
Yeah.
So you want to explain to the public what that means, and what are some of the programs that you guys have implemented there in the time that you've been there to get to that goal?
I could go on for the next 2 hours on that question, Paul. It's a great Friday, question, and it really is what we do.
Yep.
Our main goal every day is to come in and provide an environment for the offender population to utilize tools to change the way they make decisions in their lives. So when they do become released and they're back into the community, they're less likely to reoffend and more likely to be successful citizens in the community. I go to trainings all around the country, and I've been to Colorado, and it's called a Large Jail Network. And as we went around the room, everybody had to say where they were from, what department, and who the sheriff was they served. And when I stood up and said Hampden County, Springfield, Massachusetts, Sheriff Michael J. Ash, everybody's head in that room snapped over and looked who I was. I felt like the old commercial E.F. Hutton.
Yeah.
When I was speaking, people were listening. And why were they listening to me? Not because Nick Cocchi was sitting at the conference, because I came from a department that has such a great reputation around the entire country, not just the Commonwealth, but the country. Our effort on reducing recidivism it's a tough formula, but it's a simple concept. Our goal is to have people that come into the facility not go back out and make the same mistakes. So when we release you from the Hampden County Sheriff's Department, if you don't commit a new crime, the first year you're out, that's a success. And then we mark it from the first year to the third year. And we do have the lowest rate in the country.
Wow.
Now, you will see that a lot of the statistics that come in from state penitentiaries. And those facilities obviously have people who've done time for a longer period of time. Therefore, they're less likely to reoffend because they're actually been removed for so long. It's the churner, we call them. The person that comes in for a 6 to 8 month bid, then goes back out to the community, and if we don't connect with them, we don't get their attention, they go right back to the street corner or to the mischief to where they got themselves in trouble the first time. So it's really a very large team approach from the Sheriff's Department, from a human service, a mental health, a security. It's everybody, a big team that we go for, that we work forward with from day one. They come in to try to get them ready for when they walk back out. And it's, and I will say this, and this is the sheriff's line, and I'll continue to say it because I work side by side with the men and women there every day. The sheriff has hired wonderful people. The office of sheriff is so important because you have the ability to give the resources and the tools to the professionals, the correctional officer, the caseworker, the counselor, the mental health professional. We give them the tools and resources to do their job day in and day out, to provide that safe, secure environment and opportunity to change. So we're just so grateful, and I do put a thank you out to each and every one of the staff members at the Hamden County Sheriff's Department because they do a great job.
Yeah, and you know what goes on there, and what I guess when you know these races don't come up often, right? I mean,
last sheriff's race was 42 years ago.
Yeah, and I remember that because I mean I was young enough to remember the signs and or old enough to remember the signs and stuff. So when they don't come up, you know, my feeling is like even with the district attorney, these kind of things, these type of races kind of go in the background, right? And then when the race is coming up, you hear each candidate talking about what they're going to do in the office. What we really don't know and understand is how having a low rate of recidivism affects my police department here in Long Meadow, for example, or the police departments in Springfield, because you know it does have an impact. Or working with the district attorney's office.
Sure.
So the job isn't. It's a political position in the sense that you have to run for it. But it really is more, it's a highly high administrative type of position, much more than, you know, running for mayor or something like that, because there's a lot of politics in, you know, trying to get a casino in town, for example, versus
That's right.
it's low rate of recidivism is not a political decision. It's something that you're doing. It's a program that
That's
you
right.
initiate. And how do you see the Hamden County Sheriff's Department, how do they work with the local governments or the local departments in the DA's office? How does that all come together?
Well, I think we work well with the DA's office and the local law enforcement in the communities and the support service agencies out in the community because our customer is their customer. The police departments get them on the front end. They break the law, they're arrested. Then they go to the DA's for prosecution, and then when they're prosecuted, they come to jail and they do their time. And when they're in jail, it's our job to, you know, give them some type of direction. Now, they come. Many offenders come in for many different reasons, so we have an assessment tool that we use when they come into orientation. You know, we ask them. We try to figure out how many criminogenic factors they have that are likely to ream their ugly head up again when they get back into the community. So we try, if you come in for an anger management, domestic violence, you have a substance abuse issue, we try to target your individual service plan. Every offender has an individual service plan that is mapped out just for them. You know, we try to learn a little bit about you. We try to see where your shortcomings are, and then we try to educate you and give you some treatment in those areas. And hopefully, through the time you're incarcerated to the time you walk back out, we've built in some type of foundation and base that you can then continue your education treatment in the community. That's why our partnerships with the local community agencies is so important. Our good relationship with the police departments and the information sharing that we do, from whether it be gang issues or just identifying and knowing who the offenders and the inmates are, because those folks are the ones on the street. So whether it be through tattoos and gang nicknames, we have a great database full of things. So we use a Winston system where the police department from their own cruiser can tap in and take a look at who this individual may be.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think that, again, when you talk about countywide politics or countywide services, you have to talk about collaboration. You have to talk about doing things together. And I think the sheriff has done a tremendous job over his tenure of bringing people in and extending with open arms, our resources. And, you know, it's all for the betterment of the citizens of Hamden County. It's good public safety. When you think sheriff, you have to think good public safety. And what is good public safety? It's taking the people that were entrusted to have their care and custody and defusing them and giving them opportunity for change. You know, some of these guys are selling drugs on the street, making a decent penny. Not one of them's ever had the opportunity or has taken an opportunity to go and make an application out to work and have a good earnest living.
Yeah.
So what do they do when they come in? We identify that. We teach them how to fill out applications. We do mock interviews. We have a dress for success, and we just kind of walk them through.
Okay.
Look, trust us. Sit in front of that CEO or the president of a company or the manager. Interview for the job. Sell yourself. Because to sell yourself, you have to love yourself. To love yourself, you have to respect yourself. And if you can do those things, you can have a different outlook on how you perceive and how you walk in the community, and also how you treat your fellow community members.
Yeah. And so when you look at, because obviously, what's the population in the total facilities of what the Sheriff's Department is managing?
I say our population today was 1150.
Okay.
Our population behind the medium fence today was 853.
Wow.
So we are the third largest county in the Commonwealth, and we are we're a mini Chicago, as the sheriff says. He says we're a mini Chicago, a mini Philadelphia, and it's true. We have that inner city component. Okay. And so what happens on the street could happen in the facility. That's why it's important that we make we diffuse the situation. We use good classification to keep enemies apart. The gang issues, we try not to let it fester. We try to quell it, cool it off, and we have a zero tolerance to gang activity. So it's important, and a lot of the offenders that come in know we have a zero tolerance to that type of behavior. And I have to tell you, it's like when we have our kids and we grow them up, and as they're growing up, they go to reach into the cookie jar and you tell them no. You provide structure. These men and women that are incarcerated, when they're provided the structure to do the right thing, you'd be surprised how many of them do the right thing. So when we talk about the fortunate and less fortunate, there's a lot of these men and women that come inside and are incarcerated that haven't had a chance to have any of that, that good foundation, that family life, doing the right thing, the role models. So as correctional officers and caseworkers and counselors and staff, we're role models too. We try to, we come into work every day. We shave every morning. We step up and answer the time clock, and we answer the alarm clock to be here on time. So those are things that we can do just by doing our job and just by serving the public. We can show a little piece of being a role model there.
Well, that's awesome. Now, I've seen Shawshank Redemption, so I know how it works. Now, so it makes me
the librarian keep going around with the book,
So I get it all figured out. No, what I was going to say, I'm sorry. I love watching that movie sometimes. My favorite scene is the opera song on the radio, because it just stopped everybody. But when you've been there for a long time, have you, and I don't need particulars or anything like that, but have you seen these success stories, where people have gone out, and have you had contact with people, former inmates, that they're out there leading productive lives because of the programs that you've had in the facility? Well,
that's a great question, and the answer to that is not enough, and that's a good thing. We had a gentleman named Dr. Kevin Wright come into the facility several times, and he comes in and he just tries to get a feel for the culture of the staff and the culture of the facility. And I took him out to dinner one night, and we sat down and we talked, and I said, you know what, Doc? I said, there's something that's really tough about this job. And if you have the answer, I'd love to know, because at the time I was in the training department, and I'd love to be able to relay that on to our full-time staff. A landscaper can go to a yard and cut the grass and weed whack and trim it, and when he gets in the truck to drive away, he can look over his shoulder and he sees a beautifully landscaped yard. A builder can build a house. But in corrections, if we're successful, we don't see the success, because what do we see? We see the people that come back. We actually see a lot of the failures. So what we've done in our department, and I give all the credit to our aftercare incarceration support service program, is we have graduations. And every year we graduate people that have been successful, and we invite back anybody and everybody from the community who wants to come back that day, have a meal, and share their story with their success and their sobriety and their long standing being out of incarceration. And that number grows every year, grows, and it grows. So when you go to there and you start to see the faces, you can say, I remember that guy. You wouldn't think about him every day walking in the facility, because you're seeing the guy you see every day. But there have been times in the malls or out at a store that I come into a guy or out at a restaurant who was incarcerated, and they come up and and believe me, they shake your hand and they say, thank you. And they introduce you to their wife or their girlfriend. their kids, and if I have my kids, I do the same thing.
Yeah.
There's a respect there.
That's awesome.
It is.
And that's actually great to hear, because as someone who's a taxpayer, and it costs more to keep these guys in jail than it does to have them outside and lead them productive lives. And there's the human element of that too, that you want people to succeed. I know you wouldn't want a zero population, because then you probably wouldn't have a job. But I'm only kidding. But the reality though is that being able to see that, like you said, you work so hard and then you may never see the fruits of your labor.
I get letters in the mail. I get a phone, to this day, I get a phone call and a Christmas card from an ex-offender. He sends it to the jail, and he'll call me at the jail every time around Christmas, and he just wants to say thank you. And I'm only one of probably the 15 people he calls. It's just it's rewarding.
Yeah,
it's a thank you without necessarily saying thank you. And I know all of our staff, our line staff especially, the men and women who run in and save lives and keep the inmates and the offenders out of harm's way. They break up fights. They'll respond to suicide attempts potentially. We've done a great job of putting a lot of focus into the well-being and welfare of the offenders. And when they feel that from our facility and from our staff, they have a much more productive stay when they're with us.
Yeah. I wanted to talk about something. When you decided to run for this position, obviously the sheriff announced his retirement. Yeah. And, the good thing about that position is, unless you're screwing up, you're never going to hear about it. Realistically, the sheriff has his things that he does, but you never hear, the last time that the sheriff made the headlines is when he took over a facility because he was running out of room at York Street, right? So the good, if you're doing a good job, you should never really hear about the Hampden County Sheriff's Department. What made you get into this race? And I remember, because I asked Anthony Galuni the same thing, a few years ago, could you have seen yourself running for DA and stuff? And, his answer was no, because he figured he had a boss that he liked working for and that type of thing. Because it's different now getting into the political realm.
Sure.
You have a great job that you love doing, and now you got to turn on, there's a different side of this now, which is kissing babies and shaking hands and things. But what went into the decision of what made you want to, get into that? Because there's a negative side to it.
Yeah, I would say that the shaking hands and kissing babies part, that's the politics part of it.
Right.
I want to be a public servant. I want to provide, and I love people. That's number one. I love people, whether they're people in the community, people that are incarcerated. I try not to judge. What made me get into the race, and the answer that Anthony Galuni gave you, no, I never saw myself here, I would tell you I did.
Okay.
One of the questions that you're asked on employment, to get the job, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Now, I was probably a little cocky to say in 5 years I see myself sitting on that side of the table, but that was my answer. I had the pleasure.
You still got the job.
I did.
Yes, that's a good
and I had the pleasure of working full-time at the jail and also finishing my college education at Western New England College. I was doing both at the same time because I started as a summer employee, just trying to make a couple bucks in between my junior and senior year. And I fell in love with the job. I don't know what it was. I was in with the offenders. I was on response teams. I was doing escorts, and I said, this is something that I could really do.
So walking into a room full of criminals with no weapon would turn you on.
Yeah,
that's a good.
And I think that's why I've been so successful for the last 21 years. And so I was fortunate enough. I went to the sheriff and I asked if I could. There was an academy coming. I said, "Would you consider hiring me?" And I went through the process, and he hired me. But he made it. But he said, "Nick, you got to finish your education too." So I made a promise that I would finish my education, and I did. And I never looked back since. And as it came up to the sheriff making his announcement, and I had the fortunate ability to go become a trained correctional officer. And then I was a corporal, a sergeant, a lieutenant, an assistant superintendent. And I've had the pleasure of working inside the facility, in the training department, in reentry, in a housing tower, and in operations. I felt I had a good grasp of what we do and why we do it and how we have to get it done. And when the sheriff made that announcement, I went into work the next day, and I looked at staff. They were concerned. They were nervous. Yeah. Here's our leader of the past 40 years. We've had one mission. We've had one direction we were going into, and we've been successful in that. And there was some question to what's the element of unknown? Who's next? And I felt good about the way I've been mentored.
Yeah.
I felt good about the supervisors who have supervised me. And I knew that there was a legacy of correctional work that needed to continue. And that was somebody to come in and continue to do the great work that Sheriff Ash has done. Am I a carbon copy of the sheriff? No. I think we're all individuals. I go out and I meet people, and some of the first questions they ask are, Nick, how are you different than Sheriff Ash? And that's a tough question. I said, geez, Sheriff Ash is Babe Ruth of corrections.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think anybody on Babe Ruth's baseball team told Babe Ruth how to swing a baseball bat. Yeah. You know, Babe Ruth hit the most home runs. You know, he's one of the best hitters. So there's a lot I want to continue to do that we're doing now. The sheriff came into the department with a social work background from the outside, with 40 years of experience, and has been one of the most progressive sheriffs in the country. I would like to think positive to say, what could a trained correctional officer with 22, 23 years of experience with a master's degree coming in, what could we accomplish in the next 40 years?
Yeah.
And I get really excited because we have staff that are on board, ready to do the right thing, and I just get really excited of where we can continue to take the Hamilton County Sheriff's Department, keeping us relevant, and not only relevant, but a model for the entire country.
Awesome. Okay, so that's good. You don't have any trepidation. It's not a hesitation.
Excitement.
That's awesome, because you need that to run, because it will beat you down a little bit, but you have it seems like you get the.
I don't anticipate it to be easy.
Yep.
People say you got big shoes to fill, and I would just say, as an honest, I don't want to fill the shoes. I think those shoes.
You can't. Yeah,
those shoes are going to be bronzed.
Yeah.
Okay. They're going to be in the Walk of Fame.
Yeah.
But what we are going to do is take the lessons we've learned and continue the great mission. And I think that's the thing, is we've had the same philosophy over the past 40 years. In the 21 years that I've been there to this day, we've had one mission, one direction, and there's never been any confusion. And that's what I want to continue to provide as the next sheriff of Hamilton County. Smooth transition, a message of consistency, and I think a message of strength that we're going to continue the great work.
Awesome. So let me, your campaign, and I've never seen this done before, your campaign, and I've been involved in politics for a long time, so when I say I haven't seen it done before, it doesn't mean, it's been local stuff, but you have added a component to your campaign that if a political advisor was sitting here talking to you, say you might not want to become endorse and work with charities while you're also campaigning for office and doing your full-time job and taking care of your family. But your campaign, you've come up with something they call Cocchi Cares.
Yes.
And I've gone to the website and looked at it, and you've got 3 things that I would love to, do work with. And, you even Dakin Humane, awesome. We've gotten pets from there. So why don't you tell us what Cocchi Care is and why you did this in a campaign? I mean, it's very unusual, but I think it's a good thing.
Well, I think that it's a great opportunity. I've been blessed to meet folks and work with charities that are out there that give the less fortunate a better day. It's what I do every day. Yep. We try to give the less fortunate a better opportunity. So Cocchi Cares is a organization that's going to start, and we're going to utilize, hopefully, our walk through this campaign and beyond in our terms in our tenure as sheriff to bring light to these local charities that need support and help, and the great work that these men and women in the charities are doing to provide, whether it be for the kids, for the animals. I just have some very near and dear charities. The Shriners Hospital, to me, I call the neonatal NICU. It's actually heaven. I had a son that was born many weeks early, about the size of my hand. You could see through him. And it was touch and go for many weeks. And every week, 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks, and then all of a sudden, we saw a change in him. We saw a change of strength because of the care that he received there. So when I talk about angels in heaven, That's what I believe that the Shriners Hospital or the Bay State Children's Neonatal is. And I will do anything and everything I can to bring attention to and support those type of causes.
Yeah.
And I'm excited because the more people I see that see the website, I got a cause for you. Well, you know what? I think everybody deserves a shot. Let's promote all of them. Let's give some attention and focus to these individual charities that may not get that much attention on their own. Let's help.
Yeah, and I think it's amazing because once I heard about this and started looking into it, that someone's taken the energy, because there's going to be a lot of energy in this campaign.
Yes,
it's
there is.
countywide.
Absolutely.
And it's a very important position, so it's not like a selectman's race, but that's a different issue. I think there's a lot of energy there too. But
Absolutely.
But you're taking the energy from this, Hampden County-wide race and using some of that energy to propel charities. Well, like I said, I've never seen this done before, and it's an additional workload that you're taking on as well. So it's not just something saying, oh, there's a website, go over there and have some fun with it. So I commend you for that.
I'm glad you look at it that way, because it is adding more to our plate and more responsibility in why are we doing it? Because I want the community to know that we care, period. This is not just about wanting Nick Cocchi to look good. Never once do we go out, and as I'm saying we go out and give speeches in the community about me. It's about us. It's about our county. It's about the job. And I feel the same way about the charities. It's not about me looking good. It's about what can I do for them.
Yeah.
And I hope that that's what resonates with the people throughout Hampden County. If I'm willing to step up and put some time and resources here, I'd like people to come together with me and with our team so we can help support these charities. And you know what? As we support individual ones, we can then move them off and bring another one into light. So I'm open to listening and going out and meeting other folks.
Yeah.
Because you know what? When you have somebody that's involved in charity, there's a reason. There's a passion.
Yep.
And there's nothing more than somebody with passion and desire, because usually they're going to be successful.
Right.
Because failure is not an option for them.
Right, and I think that's great. Like I said, I think you're setting a bar for future campaigns, and it's given me some time to think about that as well with my campaign. That there is something beyond. This isn't just about a sheriff's race; it's about life in general.
But I think you know a lot about what we're doing, because I do know, and as you did some homework on me, Paul, I know the Rocky Marciano Foundation and bringing in Muhammad Ali and dealing with the kids. I mean, that's powerful stuff.
One of my favorite trips was to the Shriners and watching Jerry Cooney, all 6, 8 of them, hop into bed with the kid.
I mean, really, right now you just put chills in me. But that's what it's about. So that's something that we should look to do together.
Right.
Every person, every charity, every event, we can make things better. And that's really what I like to do. People a lot of times say, well, what are you going to do to change it? Law enforcement. I said, yeah, this is all part of it.
Yeah.
But building a better community. The grandmother in Longmeadow, the mother in Longmeadow, has the same fears as that grandmother and mother in Springfield, Holyoke, and Chicopee.
Absolutely, yeah.
About safety for their loved ones, about a safe environment in a community, about crime. And it's our job to make sure that we can provide everybody with that same securities.
Excellent. I was just at the Outlook luncheon from the Chamber of Commerce, and Governor Baker was there talking about the opiate crisis in our not just in our state but in our region, and some of the things that he's looking at in terms of bringing that forward. And I know that you have spoken about that as well. I know here in Longmeadow at the high school we've had some speakers come in. They had Chris Herron, the former Boston
fantastic.
Celtic. And I know it's on the plate because it's affected. It doesn't just affect inner cities. And Charlie Baker gave an interesting statistic which perked my ears up, that 4 out of 5 people who become addicted to opiates start out with prescription medication.
Absolutely.
And that one blew me away. I mean, I didn't. You want to talk a little bit about, because I don't know if folks understand when we say there's an opiate crisis going on in the Commonwealth, and it's beyond that, but I've seen the emails and so forth, and we've had the discussions here at the high school. You wanted to talk about that a little bit, about what you give some talks about on it, and how it is in our communities and what it is?
The opioid issue is absolutely countrywide. What I don't find, I don't like to say funny, so I'll say ironic. This issue is not new. I've been watching this. We've been dealing with this as a sheriff's department for 10 or 15 years. It has come to light, unfortunately, because it has now started to hit in stricken the more affluent communities. And there is no town line, there is no economic status that can keep the opioid issue out of your city or town. It is a devastating epidemic, and we have to put a tremendous amount of focus to it, and not just focus in talking about it, but a plan in place to combat it. You know, Nancy Reagan always talked about the war on, the war on drugs. Right. We're losing the war if we haven't lost it. So how are we going to get back into that mindset of winning the war on drugs and getting back and being proactive? Well, there's a couple thoughts that I have. One, many people call Howard Street the alcohol center. That is a misnomer. It is the Western Mass Correctional Addiction Center. Mm-hmm. And we've been servicing addiction and addicts for many, many years down there. It doesn't just do alcohol, it does all addictions. So I think that's one thing. But Howard Street is only so big. And as you know, we're with the mix of the MGM coming in, and yep. There's a relocation event that's we're working out right now, and I have all the faith in the world that we're going to end up in a bigger, a better, and a more productive place, which is good, because part of the success, or part of the success that needs to happen to help this opiate issue, is we have to have treatment beds. For a first-time offender on an opiate charge, I don't need you to do time behind the fences in Ludlow. We need you in a treatment bed. Want to educate you. We're going to give you treatment, and then there's an enforcement end of it. And when you leave treatment, you should have some type of post-release supervision over you for an extended period of time, so we can monitor you and make sure you're doing all the right things. One thing that happens when people get incarcerated and they come into jail, some of these guys that don't want to change their ways, you know what they say? They're up for parole. I don't want parole, decline it. I want to wrap up, clean, no parole over me, nothing. So they can go back into the community without any supervision, and they can go back and do the bad things that got them locked up in the first place. So we're going to promote, and we're going to continue to promote, good post-release supervision to help keep people on target and moving in the right direction. So when you look at the opioid issue, we have a lot of work ahead of us. It's a devastating crisis. It affects everybody. Age, it doesn't matter. And it does start with these prescription drugs. And so when I talk about there's an enforcement, it's a three-pronged approach: enforcement, education, and treatment. That's what we put on our website. That's what I believe we got to continue to look into. The law enforcement and the police officer are going to enforce it. And enforcement means also looking at the medical field and how we distribute and how much, and is there a training that's out there for the individual who's going to receive that narcotic, so they can take it responsibly, and when they're done taking them, they can dispose of them responsibly, so they're not laying around. There's a lot of work to be done, Paul, with the opioid issue. I think that D.A. Sullivan out in the Hampshire area, along with D.A. Gallooni, are going to work and put these task force together. The governor is putting a task force together, and I think it's fantastic. And I really believe that the Hampden County Sheriff's Department for the County of Hampden plays a tremendous role in helping support combating opioid issues.
Now, is it something where you guys are going out into the community and educating people on this as well? Or do you do that through the Sheriff's Department?
We do. We do when we're asked. Okay. We try not to strut our stuff into anybody's business, yep. But the schools will ask us to come in, and we have a ROAR program. But we have a gentleman that's worked at the addiction center, and he left us and is coming back. He's probably one of the best addictions counselors, instructors, and educators in the area. So we're so blessed to have him. We're going to put programs together. We're going to work closely with D.A. Gallooni. Yep. We meet with him. We met with Anthony back about 3 weeks ago, myself and Jimmy Kelleher, yep. The superintendent, and the superintendent and I will also go out and meet with Anthony, again, probably another 2 weeks. And we're talking about the youth, the opioid issue, and things like that. So there's a lot of great topics, and there's a lot of great momentum that's out there. 21 years in the business, I want to see topics and momentum turn into fruition. I want to see us move these pieces forward, and let's get some things acting.
Yep.
It's a money thing. To do these type of programs, the state has to then, pony up.
All right.
Because we need money to, have the counselors in the post-release supervision, and the drug testing, and the education, and then the treatment beds. I mean, this is all going to cost money. But again, it's cheaper to treat them outside than it is to treat them inside.
You're right.
And it's much more beneficial to treat them outside with supervision, so we can get them, really getting on a good path on their own.
Yep.
with some good toughness.
Okay. So what are the major challenges that you see if you were to become sheriff? What are the major challenges that are facing the sheriff's department? Is it funding through this, on a state level?
Yeah, I think the budget right now is our biggest challenge on a yearly and actually monthly basis. What do we do? We're very creative. My job is assistant superintendent of the housing operations, and is we monitor the population, and over the years, based on the budget, and we have to, tighten the belts. We would close units. We would close them. We would consolidate, and we would redeploy staff. It was the only way that we could effectively continue to do all the things we're doing. See, the key is when your budget's cut and you have less money, 80% plus of that is payroll.
Right.
80% is payroll. So when you have to make a cut, you're talking staff. I can't cut the food we feed the inmates. I can't cut the medical care we give the offenders. Now you're looking at payroll. So how do you get creative so you can continue doing the work, respecting your staff that do a great job, without letting people go, and have that program approach continue to roll out? And you have to get creative with either closing units, redeploying staff, sometimes doing more with less. Yep. And I really, again, I compliment the staff at the Hampden County Sheriff's Department, because we've become masterful at navigating ourselves through a tough budget time to where we can get to some reprieval, take a good deep breath of air, and then when the budget comes in not so good, we navigate ourselves through it again. Yeah. I think the sheriff and his chief financial officer and our executive team, we do a great job of being responsible to the taxpayers, and their money. So we run a very fiscally sound operation. And that's, when you talked about what was one of the other reasons why I wanted to run for sheriff, because I feel competent and confident that I can be fiscally responsible for the citizens of Hampden County. Okay. And run a very fiscally...
That's important.
It is important.
Very important. So I'm going to just bounce around a little bit. What's your favorite sport?
Hockey.
Hockey. Now, you played?
I did. I played at Ludlow High School. I played at Western New England College.
You played at West? Okay. I went to West, but their hockey program wasn't that good when I was there.
It wasn't good when I was there either.
They started it. What position did you play?
I was a winger.
See, I was a goalie. I hated you guys. But centers more, but wingers were not on my list either.
Well,
so.
The centers were the guys that didn't want to go in the corner and get dirty.
That's right.
So, I had to go in the corner and get dirty.
Get the puck to give it to
But I'm going to tell you what, I came out with the puck.
And then you passed it to the center who scored, and you got all the glory.
That's right. Yeah, so you got all the girls, and I got all the bruises.
Now, do you coach at all?
I do.
And where do you coach?
I've coached. I coached at Minnetonka High School for over 11 years as the varsity hockey coach. I coach at the Springfield Rifles organization that's based out of West Springfield, Mass. I also coach. The varsity B program with Marty Curley over at Cathedral High School.
Okay. So when you look at coaching high school hockey, because my son's a senior in high school right now, and I've coached youth sports and stuff, and I got a kick out. I love listening to kids because you learn a lot when you listen to kids about what's going on in this world, more than what you ever want to know. How is it coaching high school kids?
I want to tell you that besides the title Dad, Coach is my next favorite.
Yeah.
when I was a supervisor, a sergeant, or a lieutenant, or even hope futuristically to sheriff, my favorite title is dad. Number 2 is coach.
Yeah.
You impact people's lives. I have parents that call me all the time and say, will you talk to little Tommy and little Joey, is school this and school that and behavior. And I do it, but then I get on the phone with mom and dad and say, maybe mom and dad should be doing some of this talking, But the most rewarding thing with the high school kids is when they graduate and I'm still at the school, or they see me at the rink and they come up and they shake my hand and say, hey, coach, how you doing?
Yeah.
And I ask them how they're doing, and some are married with kids now, and to me that is the most rewarding thing, because I'm not an easy coach. I have an approach in coaching like I have at my job at the jail. I'm firm and I'm tough, but I'm very fair. Mm-hmm. So I try to get the most out of each and every one of my players. And I've learned over many years of coaching your trigger is different than his trigger.
Right.
And when I was a young coach, I thought it was Bear Bryant, Bobby Knight, Mike Ditka. You just yell and scream and people do what you tell them to do. I quickly found out that's not what happens.
Yeah. It does for 30 seconds and then you're done. Yeah.
Some kids respond to that. Some respond to a pat on the back and a confident whisper in their ear. So there's a bunch of different triggers that help motivate the kids, and I think that's one of my biggest challenges.
Yeah.
But it's also one of the most rewarding things. It's helped me become a better correctional officer, and being a good correctional officer has made me a better coach.
Yeah, I found out that the kids ended up teaching me more than I taught them, so that was
definitely
and that we knew that going in, but I definitely found it was more rewarding to sit down and talk to them, and you figure out what's on the kid's mind, and it makes you step back in life a little bit and say, okay, the win is important, but it really isn't that important because you had all these kids that were dependent on you for some sort of fun too.
I look at. I fill out applications for prep schools for my former players or players of mine. And one of the questions on the application for a prep school from a coaching standpoint is, how long have you known this applicant? And when I write it out, I write it maybe 9 years, 4 years, 3 years. But it's not just coaching in the time you spend at the rink or on the baseball field. Because most all the kids that I've coached are not just my players. They become, and I mean this, my family. Because you get close with their parents, they become friends with your kids, and you treat them like they're your own son.
Yeah.
And when I write that letter out to the prep school, I say, I'm a hockey coach, but I'm also almost a surrogate parent. And I feel that way because I follow up on where my players are and how they're doing. And I agree with you. I think I learn more from the players than they get from me. But I really appreciate the fact that they come back and they say thank you.
Yeah, and that's when you know when and I say this all the time, I tell the parents, I said, your kid's a good kid, because any kid that'll come up to me in public and say, hey, coach, how are you?
Right.
They've had a great background, their parents have taught them well and that type of thing. And I find that with most of the kids, and they're not afraid to talk to you, and so that's their confidence, their own, and that's their good nature, and actually that means that you did something right, because otherwise they would avoid you like the plague.
Right.
So I don't know, guys, how much time do we got? Another hour and a half? About 5 minutes or so? Okay. And that was the big pass. Doug Pass, and I can't even pronounce Brian's last name. I won't kill him on it either today. In the time that we have left, what do you want to convey to folks about this position? Because the thing that's kind of happened in Hamden County lately, we've had some, Hamden County probate, Hamden County clerk of Hamden County, the DA, and what we found is that the people that were running, the political people that were running, lost, and the people that were doing the job won. And I think there's a difference between a state rep, a state senator, a governor, or whatever, versus some, because that's why I said the sheriff's department, a sheriff is a political position, but it's really not.
Right.
And I think people in Hamden County have said kind of loudly in the last 4 years, look, we want the people who know how to do the job to do the job.
That's right.
And I find that very, especially when you look at the money that was spent by the quote politicians versus the people who were working there and what the results were. What do you want to convey to people about what the role and responsibility is of this, and why you're the right guy for this?
Thank you. What I want to tell the folks simply is that I'm here asking for you to give me an opportunity to earn your respect in your vote. I'm excited about the opportunity to become the next sheriff of Hampden County. I'm excited because I have the experience. And what you just said, Paul, about the clerk of courts, the probate, the DA race, every person was in the job, and they brought experience to that job. And our message, and it will be our message throughout the next several years, and even beyond the campaign, is going to be experience over politics, professionalism. We bring integrity and professionalism when you know the job. And I really get excited when I talk about what this campaign is going to lead us up until the election day, because I love people, and people have great ideas. And I think when you're running for an office, people sometimes have a tendency they want to tell you their ideas. And I've learned a lot from the people I've met. I hope that I've shed some light and have gained support for myself and for Team Cocchi as we move forward. Because again, I've been doing this for 21 years. Not 2, not 6, not 10. 21 years I have been walking with the offender population. I have been learning and understanding what this job entails, and most importantly, the importance of the job. It's not just a job that's done behind the facility in Ludlow. You have to be respectful and open to the entire community of Hampden County. Hampden County is a large area, and it's important that I, over the next several months and years, go out to every community and offer up our resources and our support for each and every community. Mayor Cohen, I bumped into him last night from Agawam. He says, Nick, are you coming to my opioid forum I'm having in a few weeks? I said, Mayor, I'll be there. Me and the mayor sat down probably about 2-3 months ago and had a great conversation. And I said to him, I said, Mr. Mayor, I said, what could the department do for you out in Agawam? Because you know what, people don't want facilities in Agawam. Mm-hmm. I said, but we also know that, Mr. Mayor, you've reported a lot of opioid issues from your area, from your high school. He goes, yeah. He goes, I report it because I want to bring help here. I report it because I want people to get better and be supported. So when you look at our facilities that are on the other side of the river from Agawam, Springfield, Ludlow, Chicopee, is there something we could do on the other side? Is there a hub of aftercare incarceration support services that we could put on the other side of the river for people to check in and get that kind of support they need when they're having a bad day, or they had a relapse, and before they have a relapse that turns into another incarceration, we get them support and get them to a bed. Mm-hmm. So these are some of the things that we're looking at, and I'm just so excited for the next several months. I want to thank you very much, Paul, for having me on your program. I know it's one of the best.
Well, it is the best, but
it's the best, and I am honored to be here. And I'd like to tell the people of Longmeadow, I look forward to earning your respect, your support. We have a website, nickcocchiforsheriff.com, and please look us up, because if you have any questions, I have no issue sitting down, talking, and meeting with anybody.
Thank you, Nick.
Thank you.
Folks, what I want to say is that, you know, I've had a lot of gifts on this show over the years. When you look at a position, and I love politics, I'm a political junkie, I love it, it's fun for me, and, you know, just watching it and talking about it. But there are certain positions where politics has no place. And even though you have to run for office, which is political, the district attorney's office, the Hampden County type of positions like probate and clerk of courts, and especially the sheriff's department, shouldn't be political. They are, and that's the essence of it. You don't get appointed by someone, you know, in the governor's office or something. But every once in a while, what I want to say to the folks along Meadow is that you run into someone who is meant for the job, who isn't looking for the next step. And all too often in politics, people run for an office to get to the next position. And I think Nick is one of those guys, and having gotten to know him over the last few months, is that anybody who attaches a charitable aspect to their campaign probably as your political advisor, I might have said maybe not do that until you're elected. But, that just shows the type of person that Nick is. And this is probably one of the most important positions in Hampden County besides the district attorney that has an effect on our community here in Long Meadow. And I always tell people that I don't care about the rest of Hampden County in the sense of, as a selectman here in Long Meadow, I care about how it impacts the town. And this position is one of those positions where, like I said, you find someone who's meant for the job, literally meant for the job, as opposed to someone who's running for it. So Nick, it's Nick Cocchi for Sheriff, C-O-C-C-H-I, NickCocchiForSheriff.com. I encourage you to visit it because you need to make up your own mind. I hope you've learned a little bit about Nick today and why it's important to have someone who knows what they're doing enter that office as opposed to a political position and looking to become the next whatever after that. Yeah. So first, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for watching, and hopefully we'll have more conversations as it gets closer to the election with Nick and anybody else who might want to run, and if they want to come on and share their views, please do. So Nick, I want to thank you again. I want to thank you for watching The Upside, and we'll see you on the next episode. Have a great day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. That was awesome.